All right. Hello, everybody. October 28th at 4:40 in the early evening, late afternoon to some of you. Here in the shop, you're with Secondhand Dan. I thought I'd show you a project that I picked up a week ago. I'm not alone today. There is a bird that's been flying around in my rafters. Maybe he'll pop into view in a little bit, but I'm not going to try and hunt him down. He's pretty skittish, hard to focus on him. But let me take you over to the lathe, and that's what I bought, a lathe. So let's run over and check it out. All right, there's the unit I was telling you about. This is a lathe. I drove about 45 minutes away from my house to get it. It's probably pushing 100 years old, if it isn't actually already 100 years old. The make on it, it's a mouthful. It sounds like a lawyer firm. It's the Strong, Carlisle, and Hammond company out of Cleveland and Detroit. I believe this used to be probably in some kind of a factory setting. That's how they got a tag on there. They would keep track of their machinery. So this was number 42 in that factory. I should have looked at this before. All right. Well, I guess it worked in the Foot Burt Company, and it was their number 42. Now, I had to dicker with a lot of things on this, and excuse me, dropped my watch. To get it here, it went on the back of my pickup truck. We're actually too close right now. To get this unit here, it was loaded on the back of my pickup truck. The man had a Kubota tractor with like forklifts on the front of it. It wasn't a very big Kubota, and it struggled a little bit, but it managed to lift this up and get it in the back of my truck. I had to ride with the tailgate down. I put this end in first because the other end has a protuberance on it that probably would have gone through my back window. So we got it on there, and you can see the springs sagged. You know, I'm sure this thing is probably at least about 500 pounds. That's my rough guesstimate. Now, when taking this thing off of my truck, I did it myself, and I don't have a tractor to lift it. But what I did was I took the chuck off. That feels like it's about 30 pounds. Took the tailstock off. That's probably about 30 pounds. And then I ran some lumber across the top of the bed and took the legs off, and the lathe sat on the lumber then without any legs on it. So I also separated the motor. So I was able to take it off in multiple sections. Now, bringing it in, I knew it needed tweaked a little bit, but it needed tweaked more than I realized at first. Now, when I picked this up, it had this cord on it, but the cord was cut off. This plug was cut off from it. And he gave me this plug. I guess he said he ran jumper wires. I saw a little video of it for about 20 seconds. It ran on the video, but he connected 110 volts to it, and the motor ran. So looking at this plug, I was a little bit confused. The plug says 240 volts on it, or 250. There it is. 250, and it's definitely not a typical 110 plug. So I did a little research. I mean, the motor obviously was a dual voltage motor. It does say you can run a 110 or 250. Well, it'd be 130 or 250, something like that. But that definitely was a 220 plug on the end. So I took the cover off the motor, and there was a little diagram on the other side of this cover that showed the different procedure for wiring for 110 or for the 240. So I studied it, and then I studied the way it was wired. I determined it was wired for the 220 volts. I keep saying 240, 250, 220. Make up my mind, will I? We'll just go with 240. So it's all the same when you're that close. But okay, like I said, the plug had been cut off the end. So that was the first issue. I had to get another plug on it, and I wasn't going to work with that one. I put this one on it. That's like a dryer cord. And it plugs into an outlet that I have floating around here. So I can plug it now into this unit here. Let's flip it over. This unit here. I can plug it into there. Now there's an excessive amount of amps here that I don't need for running the lathe, but it's also, I test dryers on that. I got an adapter, plug in my welder on that. But so I changed that, got it running. And it runs fine as far as the motor, but when you go to put it in gear, it wasn't running too well. The belt would jump off the pulleys. You can see this pulleys here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. It's one cone-shaped pulley. I guess it's shaped like a wedding cake if you look at it like this. And there's the matching one down below. But if you notice, it's set up in opposites. The biggest one here lines up with the smallest one up here. It's kind of like a 10-speed bicycle, how that works. Well, engaging it, it was slipping. I think I only got it to run a little bit on one speed. So I was a bit flummoxed on what to do. And I finally determined that the linkages were messed up. They must have serviced it once and done it incorrectly. Because I noticed this belt really had no wear on it. It didn't look like, well, much use at all. So I got down, I finally figured it out that somebody broke something and they repaired it, and they repaired it improperly. And so I think they gave up. This was welded back together on here. I think this circle with the slot, you can see the pock marks from the weld. And I actually determined they welded this end on completely upside down, because it goes in here. We'll go up and down and grab a hold and latch for the different speeds. Well, that set screw is in the wrong place. So I determined I'm going to have to eventually drill new holes to flip this handle over. Because if I put it on and line it up with the slot on that shaft, there's a keyed slot on the shaft. If I put this on, it would be upside down. Because there is a set of pulleys that line up with the keyed slot. And nobody's, broken and re-welded that. So I figured that's a given. Whatever that lands in that keyed slot is where it belongs. And it takes a key, the little metal keys, to keep the handles from slipping on the shaft. Well, the keys weren't in there, so they just randomly cranked down the nuts in whatever the closest proper position they thought would work. Especially since I guess it didn't line up anymore. So I got to straighten that out. But right now I am waiting, because I've determined also that the belt is too long. So that means it has to be shortened. And in order to shorten this belt, you have to cut it off whatever amount you need to cut off, and then crimp in a new set of whatever these cleats are, teeth. Well, not teeth. So I've managed to locate on eBay some of these, but then you need a special tool. And I even found a special tool on eBay it's an antique tool nowadays, but it's about close to it with shipping. It's going to be just under $30. So I'm going to cut about an inch off of it and press a new set of these on there. And then I'm going to test drive it I can take that handle, that red handle I was showing you, that's upside down right now, and put it on the exterior for my test. See, you can see the slot located on top there. And if I line that slot up with this, that would put the handle in this position, which means the lock, which is supposed to grab down under here, won't work because there's no slot on the bottom here. It's on the top. So you can tell there's an extra hole in here right now too. So let me get this square out of the way. So I'll be able to lock that down. With the belt shortened, I'll be able to at least manually press on it to see what kind of drive action I'm getting once I've shortened the belt. And if it seems like it's running right, because in case I say, well, I got to take some more off, I'll have to take the belt back off and shorten it a little again and press another set of those belt links in there. I've also determined that I think this belt's a little bit too narrow. I understand it doesn't have to be exactly as wide as the pulley, but it could have been at least about 1/4 inch wider and still rode center in that pulley. So 1/4 inch wider would give me like an 1/8 inch on each side. But I'll run with this if it works. I'll keep my eye out for belt material, and that can be found, but why buy it if it works? I'm also toying with the idea of maybe an old serpentine belt from a semi-truck. I could cut it to size and put these joiners on it. So that's where I'm at on this thing. I also reworked the stock when I first got it. The stock wouldn't move. That was my first project on that. I had to knock it apart. There was a pin in there. That was the hardest thing to get out. It came out in pieces. So then this is a tapered shaft. So I'm not even sure they needed that pin in there. And I found out my drill press chuck will also fit in here now. So if I need to pull that out, typically on a lot of these lathes, you would just back it off until the darn thing would pop out. Not on this one. Or you would, like on my drill press, you would run it up until you came to a slot in there, and you would hammer a tapered wedge in there and it would knock it out. Well, right now I have 2 wedges that I can just put behind here and it'll knock it off. And then I can substitute the drill chuck when I need it. This thing is actually a wood lathe. It's a wood lathe because you can tell it has no tracking gear to run anything back and forth on it. No worm gear. So, but it still do me well for a while. It's a good project. It does have a machinist chuck on it right now, so I'll be able to chuck things in, drill them in the center. I'll be able to sand things that need sanded that are long. And plus, I'll be able to do some wood turning. You got to knock this chuck off to do the wood turning. Right now, it's held on with 3 Allen bolts. And this was a son of a gun to get back on. I finally kept trying to put it on. It's heavy. It's awkward. We were in danger. I even had a friend here of mashing our fingertips and we'd get it on, and the bolt wouldn't line up by maybe even a 1/16. So what I finally did was I went to my bolt bin, got a bolt, cut the head off of it, and would thread this in first and then would just slide the chuck over this bolt and put the other 2 bolts in, and then back this one off and put the last bolt in. So that's a keeper. I'm going to need that. Maybe I'll even cut a screwdriver slot in the top of it. Now, to get this thing into the building here, like I told you, it was disassembled. I got it off the truck all by myself in pieces, but I have some iron sawhorses out there, and I was able to set it up on there and put the legs back up under it. And then we used some of those four-wheel furniture carts one under that end and one under that end. And a buddy and I, we just rolled it on back here. We rolled it back without the tailstock and the chuck. Didn't need that extra weight until we got it in place. But that worked out pretty good. So this is my lathe. It's the only lathe I've ever owned. I've worked with lathes before. In fact, I worked at a transmission shop that had the same configuration. It was a metal lathe, but it also had the leather belt drive. And rather than just a lever, it had like a crank lever that would put tension on the belt. When you would crank it, it would lock it into place. So I worked with that lathe. It was a South Bend. I would like to have another one of those. Well, another one. I didn't have one to begin with, but I had the use of one for 5 years. If anybody knows anything about lathes, put your 2 cents in, your ideas. I'm not sure what this is. I know there's a shaft under here, but I'm not sure what this does. It unscrews, and you can see it's got a slot in it. Just like I said, I want to put a slot in that bolt I need to when I take the chuck on and off it. Solid piece of metal. It screws into the back of the headstock. But I'm not sure why it was needed, what its purpose is. So if anybody knows anything about this type of lathe, there's a lot of wood lathes out there with the leather belt drive configuration, but it really probably has to be one of these specific brands, the Strong, Carlisle, Hammond. As far as, I couldn't find any belt diagrams, but it took me a while to figure out because I had all this off of this shaft here. I had that off the shaft. I had the shaft up. I know this goes in there. It's not an issue. I know where it goes. Here's some belt cages. I guess they hover above the pulleys just as extra to make sure the belt doesn't jump track. There's a low one and there's a high one. But I'm waiting for the tool to come in. So that's going to be interesting. I know we had to have the belt shortened once at the shop I worked at, and the owner had a brother who was a machinist, and he was an old guy, so he was well familiar with these leather belt drives. So I don't know if he did it personally or had a friend, but he shortened our belt and brought it back for us. Let me see if I can go ahead and show you what the tool looks like. I can show you a picture of it on the internet. Okay, there's the tool I was telling you about for putting the those little cleats, clips, hooks in the belt. This is a vintage clipper belt lacer. So I'm waiting on that tool. I purchased it on eBay. And I also purchased the hardware that's needed. Let me show you the hardware. Aha. And it's kind of convenient that it just both Clipper is, I guess, a name brand, and my fasteners and the tool just happen to be the same name in this case. I mean, there are a lot of people that make these belt fasteners, and I've seen a couple different names on the tools, but I bought the cheapest one right now because I think it's going to work for me. I don't want to invest a lot, but you can see these fasteners come in rows. So you would, like on my belt, I probably need like 1 1/4 inches. 1 1/4 inches worth on each end. So, but I only have to repair or shorten one end. So, You know, and I'm investing about $30 to shorten this belt. But it'll be well worth it if I get this machine up and running. You know, I want to see something from start to finish get completed. And then I'll have at least another work. You know, I used to think the selfie sticks were all gimmicky, but right now, I just about kill for a selfie stick. I'm holding it with my hands. My fingers are getting in the way, but I'll get one. That's chump change. So I'll get a selfie stick, but like I say, I'm still toying with whether or not to go GoPro or a lesser brand of camera if I'm going to continue doing this. Well, let me show you what my lathe can do. Like I said, right now it can't do a whole lot, but at least it's doing more than when I bought it. Like I said, it had the wrong, well, not the wrong plug, but a plug that I couldn't work with, and it was cut off anyway. So I went ahead and put this on, and now we can plug it into here. See, I actually lowered the box. I thought it only had one bolt in it. It was going crooked, so I said, well, if I'm going to drill another bolt, I may as well lower it, because I thought there was too much stress on this lower wire anyway. So I brought the box closer to that wire, but here we go. That's this rattling. I've got to, once I'm finishing up, there's a nut that goes on the end of that. All right, well, it's something, you know, it's something. Until I find one better at a great price. I mean, I bought this one for very little money. So let me go ahead and turn that off there. Okay, well, right now this room where the lathe sits is full of stuff, but believe it or not, I've actually gotten rid of a lot of stuff. We've been taking stuff up to an auction that's about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes away from us. I'm trying to thin out the herd here because the stuff isn't selling like it used to. I mean, I still sell a lot of stuff, but I don't get a lot of walk-in traffic in my store. That's a keeper there. Although it's for sale because I do have another bandsaw that I picked up, but I didn't want to swap them out until somebody bought this one.